A lot of people believe that Varus is one of the weakest 4 costs currently in the meta, but thanks to a lot of innovation by Korean players and Chinese players optimizing the comp, Varus is actually secretly one of the best carries to play for currently. In this episode of Into Deep, we're going to hop on board with a player who actually figured out how to play Varus in tournament and use it for a clutch victory to advance to the next day. But unlike Kalista, there's more than one way to play Varus. Let's check out some of the variations that you can play. The main thing about Varus that makes him really powerful is that he's very versatile with a lot of emblems. I think a lot of people already know that if you get a Pyro and a Frost, it's quite good. And many have caught on that Blasters is pretty powerful, especially if you're able to get like 6 Blasters with 3-star Ezreal. And a lot of people have highlight videos to show you how powerful it can be. But one of the real big punches is whether or not you can get an Arcana setup. And the reality is you don't even need an Arcana emblem. It's just what helps take it over the top and make it really, really strong. So the tier 1 setups, in my opinion, with Varus is Arcana and Blasters. Tier 2 would be Pyro and Frost. And then tier 3 is probably Shapeshifters that gets enabled because Nasus, Smolder, Shyvana is a package that works well with Varus. So you can kind of splash that in. And Vertical Shapeshifters is a cheap way you can play the board. If you do end up playing the Arcana version, the units that are often itemized are Tahm Kench and Xerath. And the cool thing about Arcana is that you actually end up charming a bunch of different units throughout the game. The most common charm setup that you're going to be doing for Arcana is going to be charming the Hecarim for the AD if you feel like you have a good enough frontline, or Tahm Kench if you're going up against matchups that have a lot of burst, or you feel like your frontline is too weak because it's too many 1-stars. And then, of course, late game, if you have enough charms, like, you know, the true damage from Xerath is very, very strong. So if you're in a situation where you have 18, 21 charms bought, and you have, you know, a bunch of Arcana on the board, this ends up being really, really powerful. And the board is pretty straightforward. You just play Varus plus the 4 Arcana, Shen for the Bastion and the Pyro, and then this Rumble for the Vanguard and Blaster. And the last spot is Flex. In this case, it's just Bard, which ties in a bunch of things like Sugarcraft and Scholar, but you can just fight a bunch of different units. It doesn't really matter. Like Milio is also good here. When you're playing Blasters, it's always just 6 Blasters no matter what. Blaster M can go on anyone. Usually it goes on like Hecarim because he's a damage unit. If you get 6 Blasters, you're probably tempted to roll on 7 for Ezreal 3 before you move up, but you want to get 6 Blasters ASAP. So it's kind of an awkward comp where sometimes you're going to be playing 6 Blasters with almost no frontline on 7, or you go to 8 and then roll for Ezreal 3. Pyro is pretty much just get 5 Pyro ASAP and then hit the 5 costs. You either Pyro, Briar, or Smolder, whichever you're able to hit and itemize first. And a lot of times you're just kind of playing like a standard tempo line of just playing around as many Pyro stacks as you possibly can. By the late game, you should get over 100. And Frost is not really about Varus, to be quite honest. If you play Varus and Nasus and Frost, you're kind of doing that as a placeholder because late game, you'd rather play around Briar and Smolder. But it's still really good because Frost just gives you so many tempo options. And you'll never really be weak throughout the course of the game as long as you have upgrades. The really cool thing about Varus is that if you play your early game correctly around some of these units like Frost and Dragons, Shapeshifters, you'll be ready to capitalize on any line that Varus offers on your 3-2 and 4-2 augment. So on 3-2, 4-2, you get offered things like a Frost, an Arcana emblem, maybe stuff that's good for Shapeshifters or even a Pyro. You'll be ready to capitalize on it ASAP. But the core always starts off with Frost Hunters because they are the best users to capitalize off things like Infinity Edge since you get a bunch of flat AD. So Namzi ends up being a great item holder if you can upgrade her. And then you can have things like Warwick, hold items. Maybe if you don't have Frost, you play like a Blitzcrank. At level 5, maybe you get a Swain and you can have Swain tank alongside Shyvana and get Dragon in with Shapeshifters. At level 6, you can start putting things like Vanguards. If you get a Pyro emblem, maybe you tech in a Kali and you Pyro Namzi so you start getting stacks. Level 6 is pretty flexible though, so just, you know, play whatever makes sense based off what you're hitting. Maybe you get a Shapeshifter +1 of some kind, and then you get a 4th Shapeshifter in. In this example, at level 7, we pretty much are ready to capitalize off of any transition possible for Varus. We have Frost in, so we're ready to go into Frost. We have Shapeshifters in with Shyvana and Swain. We have Blasters with Rumble and Hui. We have Arcana. Because Tahm Kench is the Vanguard, he actually slots in really nicely, and he also anchors our Arcana pivot. And so this is just an example of like how you can actually make Varus versatile and ready to capitalize off of anything that you end up hitting. And for that reason, I would probably recommend waiting to roll down at 4-2 and rarely level early to roll for Varus. If you're on a really rich portal, you might be tempted to go to level 8 at 4-1 the turn before your augment and then roll down. But just always keep in mind that your augment might change everything if you get an extra emblem. And then this level 8 is just an example of an Arcana pivot, which is probably one of the harder ones to pull off. Basically, you'd be rolling for the core units of the Arcana plus Shen and Varus. So Varus, Shen, Hecarim, Tahm Kench, Ahri, and +1, so Rumble. And then these like are just preservers because preservers is just OP. You hit the Arcana emblem, Arcana ends up being here. And at level 9, you just put in the 5 cost. Morgana over Rakan. This is an even shroud. Hold on, let me replace that real quick. Boom, adaptive, which is his best item. A lot of people feel like Shojin is the item that you go for on Xerath, but his best item by far is adaptive, and then you just put other AP items on him. The number one component that you're thinking about with Varus is always sword, and the nice thing is sword is not really contested on Carousel right now because everyone that's playing Kalista want bow, rod, and belt, and then all the AP players want rods and tiers. So you're just really not going to be contested on sword, and you could use a lot of them. Best in slot Varus rarely happens, but if you do end up getting it, the data suggests that it's in 2 Infinity Edges and Deathblade, which is 4 swords. I don't think you're going to actually get that. But a lot of times when you end up happening is you just play like Infinity Edge, Shojin, and then maybe a second one, or maybe you get Deathblade and then you combo it with like Runins and something else because you just can't get that many swords like red buff. So just be a little bit more open-ended with what you play with Varus as long as it kind of makes sense. But I will say that these 4 items on the right on Varus are noticeably weaker on DPS. The most important thing for Varus is that when he casts, he kills. And if you put things like Last Whisper and Red Buff, they're really good for the utility that they provide because it burns and shreds the armor. But there's a chance that you don't kill them. And then that ends up complicating his second cast because you really just want to one-shot things. And so just keep in mind that that's kind of a trade-off. And the way you offset that trade-off is you have a reliable secondary carry to help clean up. So let's say you're playing Shojin, Last Whisper, Infinity Edge, and you shoot. You're not killing a bunch of stuff. You have a second duo carry to help clean everything up. So that way, if Varus casts again, you can start working on the weaker units. The most common 4-cost tanks you'll be playing around in all the setups we talked about was Tahm Kench and Nasus. So just pretty much tossing all the belts, vests, and tiers onto these 4-costs. I personally think that Vow and Adaptive are very, very good. And then there's a bonus of Adaptive being really good on Xerath late game if you end up going into Arcana. So you can always remove that and put another defensive item on them. And it works just really well with your item economy. Rod ends up being the worst component for this composition line, so try to avoid it. So in summary, you want sword, then glove, then tier for your carousel component priority, and tier is fine because you can make a Shojin as well as a wide assortment of defensive items. In terms of defensive items, there are things I want to shout out. Sometimes you really need to make utility like Sunfire and Even Shroud, and then Bramble ends up not being that bad in the meta right now because there's so many Kalista players. So a lot of people are used to Bramble being quite bad, and that's quite true. Bramble is still not that great, but currently in this meta, if there's so many Kalista players, this Bramble ends up being better than usual. Let's hop on board with Ramblinnn, who actually played this in the middle of the Tactician's Cup, which is an official tournament circuit that qualifies you for the championships. We're going to be playing on Golden Finale, so Golden Finale is just a good example portal to play off of because it just shows you nothing crazy is going on with a bunch of extra emblems, an extra bunch of gold, a bunch of extra components. Ramblinnn is a person that also joins me a lot for my tournament coverage co-streams. He is a top challenger player. At one point was ranked 1 in North America back in like set 6. And just for context, in this tournament, he's on the last game of the day of competition, and he's behind in points. So he needs to get like a top 4 in order to advance. And so it's not like he's just playing this game for fun where it didn't matter. The stakes are high, and if he messes up, he's going to get eliminated. We start off with a Zoe pair, and we're pretty much going to sell all the 2 costs that we don't think are valuable. But he's not holding on to Warwick pair, and I think that's because he wants to play around the items that he already got. The important thing to note is that he does get 5 components, and he knew that was going to be the case because there were 3 components here, and he already got all of his gold. So he knew that there's going to be 2 more components. In general, when you're dropping orbs on stage 2, 2 things usually happen. You get 3 items and you get 6 gold as a base. And if you get all that already by 1-4, you know that more components are coming or potentially more gold. So already, because he has Zoe 2 and Poppy pair, Warwick pair is a little bit less valuable since he's most likely going to play around the Bastions and the Witchcraft as opposed to playing around Frost and Vanguard. And he doesn't have Twitch to really tie things in, nor does he have any bow and swords. So he's holding on to Kassadin in case he's able to play around Kassadin because he loves using these kinds of components if he wants to reroll multi-strikers. But he does get a sword and a bow. And he thought about like selling, but he didn't want to react rashly for no reason. Taking a look at his augments, he got Spoils of War, Keepers, and Tiny Titans. Spoils of War is a really fun augment, but the downside of it is that you have to make sure you have a strong board. And he does have a Zoe too, but I'm not entirely sure how strong he's able to convert off of it. If he had good AP items like a Shojin and, Death Cap or something equivalent of that early game onto Zoe, then probably Spoils of War is good because he can reliably kill a lot of enemies and drop loot. And this ends up being like a really good econ start that snowballs. Spoils of War is actually really good at stage 3 and 4 because you start getting things like duplicators, item components, and maybe even like 5 costs that come out of a chest. And so the nice thing about Spoils of War is that it might be interpreted as like drip economy that gives you 1 or 2 gold early, but it actually can snowball in the late stages of the game. So I really like it. And I think Silver Spoils of War is much better than Golden Prismatic because of the relative power of those augmenteers. Keepers is really good for melee carries, so he's holding Kassadins. If you really want to play around Kassadin right now, or maybe use Kassadin as an item holder into something like a Hecarim, he could slam things like Titans and Bloodthirster, or even Quicksilver and Titans, and then try to play for Asterisk Gauge. So Keepers is not bad at all if he wants to go into a melee reroll. So like multi-strikers or warriors, most likely multi-strikers these days, because warrior feels like it's gated by the emblem. You need to have 6 warrior to be really strong, otherwise you are too weak. And also the nice thing about Keepers for his tournament position is that it's a really safe start. You're able to usually win streak and be very strong early, and that's a way to preserve HP and play for a safe placement. Tiny Titans is just really weak early. It ends up sabotaging your lose streak if you need to go for it, because you lose a bunch of HP and you're still, last pick on carousel. And he's not playing like Fortune or anything like that. So I just think Tiny Titans at 2-1 is generally a lot weaker than it is at 3-2. Ramblinnn rolls 1 and 3, and he holds on to Keepers because he does have that Kassadin, and so he's just being mindful of what he might do. He gets Blistering Strikes and Precise Planning. Blistering Strikes is something that's better as the game progresses, because right now, burning 5% of their max HP when they're such low value units, like 1 cost 1 stars, doesn't really do very much. But it is nice because it kind of gets like an item out of the way. Like, he now doesn't have to ever build anti-heal, which is really nice. So he actually gets more item components. And Precise Planning is just, in general, an extremely powerful silver because it just gives you so much gold. And if you win or lose, you get 3 gold. And if you play a reasonably competitive board, like he has a Zoe 2, he should be able to kill 1 of those units at level 4, 2 of those units at level 5, and generally win or lose by 3. So it's very, very good. In fact, many top players are pegging this as probably the best silver in the game generically. So I'm pretty sure that Precise Planning supersedes Keepers. Even though Keepers is a good pick, this is just way too good value to pass up. And right now, economy is what's driving most of stage 2 and stage 3. Ramblinnn does a quick scout, and he sees that there are a decent amount of people who are playing reasonable boards. One thing that's interesting as well is that he could have leveled and played another unit, but by just playing 3 strong units, he should likely activate Precise Planning, guaranteed. And it doesn't really matter if he wins by 3, but if he levels and plays a 4th unit, there's a chance that he wins by 4 and then ruins Precise Planning. So I think that kind of like small measured play is a really big deal, because I think people would default level there because they think, oh, I want to be strong and kill units. But if you queued up against somebody who is really weak, and then, it was like a 4-0 cleanup, he actually lost 3 gold. Also, in an interesting setup here, he slammed Last Whisper on Poppy because Poppy is an AD champion. It's not really optimal at all. I think a lot of people would slam Last Whisper on Zoe, but it's smart because Poppy is the person that can capitalize on it the most. And so it's just like a small thing for him to do to try and get a little bit extra damage onto his board and kill units. Also, by just not leveling, you see that he's already at 20 gold. And that's kind of the power of Precise Planning. He's already making so much econ. Like, it doesn't matter if he streaks or not, as long as he's just racking up the Precise Planning. And you're getting 3 gold per turn, which is just insane. We used to complain about Mogul's Mail giving you 2 gold a turn consistently by printing with the item that delays every 6 seconds. Now we're getting 3 gold a turn, and he wins here, and he gets activating Precise Planning again. It's just so good. And you notice that he's not even playing around like some amazing early game synergy. He has Last Whisper on Poppy, and he's just making Witchcraft and Shapeshifter work. Interesting to note, though, that he had the option of taking the Minor Polymorph and transforming one of these 1 cost into a 2 cost. I think that might have been worth it in my book, but I think in his mind, he doesn't want to like wreck the synergy, because there's a pretty good chance that he might get a Poppy transformed into like a 2 cost that's not really valuable. And then he would just kind of be stuck in a situation where he's not really happy with the Last Whisper. He might want to sell. It's just something that he doesn't think is worth it right now. Ramblinnn does level to 5 and plays this Kassadin for Portal, which is good. Portal is a lot of early game DPS. And he's scouting. He sees Goobums and other strong boards in the lobby. So he definitely thinks it's worth it. He's choosing not to slam in case that ends up making his board too strong. Like against this board, I think that he might not actually get a Precise Planning value because he won by too many units. So it's just like one of those things where he wanted to be careful about how strong his board is, and he lost value here against Milk. And also, you can notice that he positioned in a way to sacrifice these units. Very thoughtful from him, because early game, this might look like bad positioning, but he's trying to have these 2 units almost guaranteed die, so that way he can have 3 units survive for Precise Planning and end up being in a spot where even if he does win, like he's positioning poorly so he can get value off of that. He ends up hitting a Callista and a Hecarim, by the way, which is pretty insane. That activates 3 multi-striker. He does end up slamming Last Whisper, which I think actually he has to be careful about because it might end up doing the exact thing we just talked about. Ooh, okay, the Ziggs bombed and he won by 3, so that's really big. But kind of going back to what we said, which is if he slammed IE, he probably would have been too strong, and there's a pretty good chance he would have won that fight 4-0 and then lost precise planning value. The interesting thing here is that this lobby has a lot of Kalista players. There's, 3 people playing Kalista at least. And so Ramblinnn actually has a, double-edged sword, pun intended, where he has the ability to play Kalista in the interim and then also really grief a lot of the other players that want to find a Kalista. And you're going to see something interesting here with a bunch of gloves. He actually has the Infinity Edge and the opportunity to slam some frontline items. He definitely has Varus items, and he is going to try to play around this Kalista in stage 3 because Kalista is still a unit that gets multi-striker value, and while Rageblade is one of her best items, if not the best item on her, always, you get a ton of AD on her, she still ends up doing pretty good mana damage early game. And so instead of playing around like a 2-star Namzi, you can just have units like this Kalista hold the AD items, and you just see that she still gets the multi-striker triple proc and still doing a lot of damage. Looks like Ramblinnn is too strong for this fight, so he ends up winning 6-0, but that's okay. Precise planning, you're not going to get it every single round. Notice that he's on a 4 streak, and another way you can get 3 gold per round is start a win streak. Don't miss the forest for the trees. 3-2 augment comes up. We got Epoch Plus, Portal Crest, and Clockwork Accelerator. Epoch Plus is an augment that is considered an econ, so if you took it, it'd be double economy. And right now in the current meta, that's actually not a bad thing if you're trying to play a very contested composition or you're trying to push to level 9. And in general, I think it's actually fine to take double econ in the current meta because 5 costs are so good and some comps just need to get online very quickly. So I wouldn't hate it here, but I don't think it's like the best pick. Portal Crest is interesting because it is strong power now, but Portal means you have to play around Rise in order to get the value off of it. And we have Last Whisper and IE Slam, so I don't think it's Portal at all here, unfortunately. But it does improve our board quality if we're able to get 6 Portal. Clockwork Accelerator actually got buffed again, and it's actually really funny because it was like 5% every 5 seconds or something like that at one point. So it's just gotten crazy buffed, and it's still kind of okay, not amazing. In general, though, if you look at the big picture, Varus doesn't really need too much attack speed, as you might know, because this is basically like sort of what Rageblade does. Every few seconds, you get more attack speed. And Varus is not very good with Rageblade because attack speed is not what he scales off of. He just really wants a bunch of AD and mana. So Clockwork Accelerator ends up being a little bit inefficient for Varus. And if he knows he's going to be playing Varus, which I think at this point he's committed with his IE and Last Whisper, that it's probably not Clockwork Accelerator. That being said, it's actually pretty good right now. So the argument for Clockwork Accelerator is that he's on a 4 streak, so he wants to continue his momentum and win streak. And he knows that Goobums is quite strong. And also, I think that this is a position where both him and Goobums are so rift, they might level to 7 to try and beat their opponent. So we'll see. We roll all 3 and we get Blossoming Lotus, which doesn't really mean very much right now because the only unit that we care about critically striking is Varus, and we already have an Infinity Edge. So it doesn't have that much synergy. Plus, I just think that in general, it's a little bit on the weaker side because Varus ends up casting like a few seconds in and you get 5% crit strike chance, which is not great. Maybe 10 if you're really lucky. Keepers, for the same reason we talked about, is just not really that applicable here because we're not really playing much melee. But if you didn't have a better combat augment, it's surprisingly fine here. You could just put Keepers on everyone but your backline, like Varus and Kalista. And then Avenge the Fallen is just really powerful. They buffed it so much over the course of a couple patches now. And if you do have 3 allies that die, which we have, like a Jace 1 and a Cassidy 1 we can sacrifice, it ends up having good synergy with precise planning because 3 of our allies die, but 3 of our allies survive. They get really strong. They stay alive. We get precise planning value. So I think Avenge the Fallen is a clear pick here. We hit a Rise, and, ironically enough, if we hit that Portal Emblem, things have been really good, but our items are not fit for it, so we have to skip on that Portal Emblem. And just as a general rule of thumb, I haven't really brought this point up in quite some time for a couple sets now, but in general, you always want to play around things that are more permanent and harder to fix. So augments and your items are the most likely things that you want to play around for your direction of your game. It doesn't matter if he gets Portal +1 and he has all the Portal units, if his items are bad, because he has nobody to hold Last Whisper and Infinity Edge reliably late game except Ezreal. And that's not going to be as powerful of a way to cap your board because you're playing around a 3 cost as opposed to a 4 cost. That's sort of like a basic intermediate concept, but we haven't gone over that in quite some time. So I just want to refresh it in case anybody's new to TFT. So we do end up leveling a 7 here, which is off interval. This is actually quite unusual, but this is only because he is on a 5 win streak. He can still make 40 gold reliably if he's able to get there. And he has precise planning. And he has a unit that he can play to try to get the fairy emblem in and get this extra crown onto Kalista. And also Goobums is win streaking as well. So there's actually so many different layers of what Ramblinn's considering. And look at that. He wins by 2 units. That was absolutely a level diff. and he gets precise planning value, and he makes 40. So this is an incredible play and spot here from Ramblinnn to really be able to min-max in a spot that is pretty counterintuitive. Most people just say, hey, I don't want to waste that extra gold. And, you know, I already have so much economy going. I'd probably just like wait and see. Leveling at 3 to 7 is very unusual play, and I think that was a really good decision here from Ramblinnn. Ramblinnn gets a vest on a Karma. That's the highest cost unit available, so it's like economy, plus you always need to make defensive items. Another element of it is he wants to try to complete an item every single time he can because he's win streaking, so he wants to maintain that momentum. If he takes like, you know, another tier or something or another sword and he can't slam an item, he has 3 components open. This way, he gets a guaranteed item slam, and he can try it and continue to press his win streak. Slams a glove onto the Hecarim, and that's fine. Like, it's just something that might potentially help if it gives him an extra crit. Oh my gosh, he actually wins by 3 units again. I thought he was going to win by like 5, so huge streak here for Ramblinnn. And that's sort of, you know, a little bit of the luck of the draw in terms of his matchmaking, but this is all very calculated and deliberate. So Ramblinn's here at 3-6. He is streaking. He still hasn't matched up against Goobums, but now Milk is also streaking. And I actually gotta rewind and kind of review a decision here. Ramblinnn checks that he's 1 turn off or 1 roll off in order to activate a charm. And he's already above 50 gold anyways. So he actually rolls 1 time to see that if he can get a combat charm or something else that's really good. And lo and behold, he actually makes his money back because he gets a econ charm and then he hits a Diana. And that's really fortunate, but that's something that's like a spontaneous decision that he's evaluating based off his situation, recognizing that he really wants to try and keep his win streak. So he rolls just 1 time to see if the charm can swing things, and it doesn't work out. He ends up losing. But I think that's a good decision regardless. And he actually has huge dividend paid off because he ends up hitting a Diana, which he can play around for the rest of the game. And Diana is not necessarily a unit that goes into a lot of the Varus composition that isn't Frost, but Diana is such a powerful 5 cost right now in the meta that you can just base your game plan around it. So maybe instead of just playing 2 Bastion with Shen and Hecarim, now maybe we play around 4 Bastion and try to find a way to include Diana and then play, say, a Taric. And those are just 4 quality units that can't be bad to play around. If you have Diana plus upgraded Taric, Shen, and Hecarim, and Varus in the back line, that just sounds pretty decent. So we're going to go for a roll down here, and we're clearly looking for Varus and upgrading things like the Rumble. These are all just good quality units. I like the make of things like the Shyvana 2 as well. Looks like we are getting out of the Callista, and we are on Varus pair. We're going to stop at 10 gold, and I think that was just a very measured response here, trying not to get too crazy. Does make an adaptive because that is a really powerful item for the front line to get resistances, and as we talked about, late game, it can be moved if you end up hitting the Xerath, which he did. And, I mean, make no mistake, he did end up spiking a Diana and a Xerath early, so that is very fortunate. I do think he loses to Goobums, who's on a streak with this Wukong. Oh, never mind. He actually ends up getting the win. That's pretty big. Looking at these augments on 4-2, we have Spellblade, Shields Up, and You Have My Sword. Spellblades is not applicable. We're not playing an AP comp. That's a never take here. Shields Up is also not applicable. We're trying to play around Bastions more than our Vanguards because we have that early Diana. So I think 1 and 2 are rolled instantly. And You Have My Sword is actually quite interesting because it can make another Infinity Edge. And we have a leftover item for Varus. So I'm leaning towards You Have My Sword. He rolls 1 and 2. Dual Q is actually just really good in the current meta right now. 2 8 and 5 costs, like almost all of them are good. Smolder, Diana pair, Morgana's always good. You can get Emilio, which ends up being very versatile for compositions. I think Nora is quite weak here, but that's fine. The other element of DOQ that people don't talk about is you get 2 copies of random component, which could be really huge. Sometimes you get like, you know, tier when you need it, or rod, sword, etc. But I just think that You Have My Sword is like too high value to pass up because the 15 AD is good for your whole team. That's like what Varus wants. That's entirely the reason why we Hecarim Charm for Arcana, and it makes an Infinity Edge, which would be the 3rd item for Varus. It's just too good to pass up. And, you know, obviously Shapeshifter Crest is not what we're playing for. Going back to what we said though in the core units, part of the reason why you hold all these different kinds of units because he got a Shapeshifter at 4-2, and so now if he was like leaning into that, or let's say he hit a Blaster +1 or a Frost and Pyro +1, he'd be ready to capitalize. So it's not applicable here, but potentially a way to showcase why it's very important to just be versatile with your 4-2 roll down and make sure that you have your emblems that are going to potentially influence your play. Okay, so he takes You Have My Sword, and I think this is just clearly going for double Infinity Edge, and he's going to roll down again. One thing I noticed is that Ramblinnn rolled down at 4-1 instead of 4-2, but again, it's an economic lead situation where you want to push the tempo. He also charmed his Tahm Kench and then his Hecarim to see how much HP he would get. But the reality is, you oftentimes default charm Hecarim because you just want the flat amount of damage. So that way, when Varus casts like this, boom, huge amount of damage, and most likely should be able to clean everything up. Yeah, he's going up against a Kalista that has a Milio too, but the Varus should be able to clean everything up because all of these Kalista players are just tripping over each other and contesting the same units. There's a Kalista in the shop. If I was Ramblinnn, I'd be very tempted to hold this, but I think he doesn't want to hold it at the cost of economy. He also picks up damage amp for Xerath and his team, and Xerath is going to develop as a secondary carry this game because he hit it really early. But if he didn't hit it, he could probably just play another frontliner. Like maybe he could play Shen for the 3 Pyro, and it'd be 3 Bastion, but that's okay. Being a little bit short, and I think that the fight lost here against Kalista 1 is a positioning diff. If you look at the way Varus is shooting in the bottom right, he's not going to be able to splash the Kalista because he's going to be aiming here. And it just shows you the difference between going against enemies that are clumped around their Kalista versus not, because he fires and he doesn't end up actually killing a lot of things. The second thing is he doesn't actually have armor shred, and that ends up being a really big deal because a lot of those resistances end up stacking and Varus can't burst. It doesn't matter if you crit strike and you multiply a lot if you're going to get cut by a lot of multipliers through armor. So he needs to work on either having that armor reduction and maybe that anti-heal. I just noticed that he doesn't actually have Dragon or red buff Sunfire. So he's actually missing a lot of utility, and I think that's probably going to be something that he has to evaluate later in the game. That being said, the remaining component on Carousel, there really isn't any anti-heal available, so he's just going to go for Death Cap onto his Xerath. He hits the Taric, so it looks like he's going to tech in the 4 Bastion and sub out the Shapeshifters, and he still keeps 2 Pyro this way. Just very intelligent board building, recognizing like when to upgrade and when to downgrade. Like he does take out a Shyvana 2, but he gets to put in 4 Bastion and power up his Diana. And his Diana is pretty much the tank of his team because she's holding the 3 items. Just going back to the core principles of TFT of just trying to play around your item holders. Looks like Milk is still just playing in Ezreal 2 right now. And Milk, I think, is contested on Ezreal, so a little bit unfortunate for him. But in general, this is kind of like the reason why Varus ends up being really good is that you can play around all of the units that aren't contested. Ramblinnn picks the Moon here, and I think it's because he has 76 HP. I'm rewinding to show you guys that it's okay to take here. In late game situations, if he was like at 34 HP, like let's say he's in Milk spot, I think it's actually quite a poor take because the game's not going to last long enough for him. But right now, Ramblinn's in a spot where he can cap out the highest by having his Xerath 2 and his Diana 2. He also item removed and put the adaptive onto the Xerath and items onto the Tahm Kench 2 because Tahm Kench is the more reliable unit right now with the Vow. And it looks like Diana is starting to be a little bit less reliable as the game starts to power up. And now you start to see that that duo carry from Xerath is actually valuable. Together, they combine for 10k, which is huge. That should wipe everything. And Varus should be good enough to get him to 9 now. He's now charming Xerath and Tahm Kench. He's just constantly evaluating how much power he gets. Generally, the rule that I would say is that once you're at 15 charms, Xerath with a bunch of Arcana, that is the green light to start using true damage. But late game situations, I still think you're going to be going for Hecarim the majority of the time, and sometimes the odd Tahm Kench. He picks up Major Wish. At this point in stage 5, you want a combat charm ideally every round. Ramblinnn has a Spark that he can make here, so he'll have Sunder and Spark. I misspoke earlier. He actually did have Sunder, so I said that he was missing utility. I guess I was just like focused on the wrong thing, but he did have Last Whisper, so he just basically needs anti-heal now at this point. The thing that's really interesting to me is that he actually didn't prioritize a 3rd item onto Xerath and a 3rd item onto Tahm Kench. It's a little bit unusual, and I think this is a nod to him saying that he thinks that the game's going to go long enough for him to be able to benefit from it. And one thing about taking the Moon is that he actually gets 7% odds now, and he's rolling so much on 8. 7% is actually not that little when you kind of consider how often you end up rolling on 8. So he ends up hitting a Xerath 2 and a Diana 2, which is high roll, don't get me wrong, but it's actually more common than you might think it is because he's going to be rolling this stage anyways for charms. And so that's one of the things that we talked about of investing into the future. And of course, make no mistake, this is a very high roll game and spot in general for Ramblinnn, but just to go to show you like how much he's rewarded for investing early, and he needed all that gold that he can get because he is rolling so much on 8, and he's also playing generally uncontested because people are not looking for Varus and all these other different units. Like, it is worth noting that other people are picking out Camille's, Morganas, Milios, right? All these different other units that are not Xerath and Diana. So all these different fairy players are pulling out legendaries, like, right? Other people are high rolling as well. This is a 2-star Morgana on 8. Milio 2 on 8. So, you know, if you're 7% odds are hitting 5 cost, you got to hit something. Looks like his finals opponents are going to be Ziggs and the remaining Callista players. There's pretty much, I think, 2 Callista players and the Ziggs left over. I'm looking for a third item for Xerath here. The only AP item here is adaptive. I don't think we need another frontline item because we just really want to have a big amount of burst. Picks up the lightning strike dummy for the Xerath, so that just adds a little bit more frontline and damage. And I think right now Ramblinnn is all clear to go to 9. I think that he did roll a lot on 8, and I wasn't sure if he was supposed to roll on 8 as much as he did, but I kind of forgot that he had the moon. So that ends up giving him so much more potential to upgrade. And now you're seeing like the dividends of him rolling so much on 8 paying off. He ends up positioning Varus in the 3rd row. This is a little bit of a trick to try and extend Varus to target the backline. It doesn't work, but it's a very cute idea because he knows that Goobums is clumping in the top left. And so this is him trying to deliberately fix his positioning against that matchup. For those of you who don't know, Varus targets within his range. So if you move him up 1 and he targets the largest clump, there's a possibility that he'll target the back row. But if he's in the 4th row and this is the largest clump, he actually won't hit because it's not within his range. So the 3rd row Varus is just a neat little one-off trick for you to punish people who end up clumping a lot in a specific corner. But this person, for example, is spreading out entirely because 1, they have exiles. 2, they're trying to spread out for Ziggs. So you're not really going to get a lot of that clump value. But in general, Varus just kind of dumpsters, I think, the Honeymancy in general. Like, they just can't handle the amount of burst that he generates, which is surprising. You would expect that with so many 3 stars that Honeymancy would be able to withstand the burst, but it just can't. Ramblinnn adds in Ari as the last unit that he potentially adds in, so he can go for 4 Arcana. At 9, he basically has the ability to play whatever he wants. He's most likely just going to stay on this Diana, so I would be surprised if he ever, like, replaced 4 Bastion. Just keep the good front line that he has. And I think he just adds in Ari. And if he needs to, he can go even to 10 because he's so far ahead. He has all the upgrades on 5 cost. He doesn't need anything more. He picks a Bloodthirster for Diana because that's just the other threat of his composition. So now he wants to play carry Diana. And now he has, you know, what many people consider to be like almost Bis Diana as well. So he has 3 item Varus, 3 item Xerath, 3 item Diana, and those are his 3 carries, turning Diana from a tank into a carry throughout the course of the game. Just very good, flexible play. And everything else just looks way too weak, right? This is a Callista board that survived the gauntlet of Callista players, but I mean, he worked so hard just to get a 4th. He gets offered Judgment for his next one, and he's at 76 HP, so I think right now he's thinking that he can just push to level 10. Level 10 and add in, say, like a Milio and just itemize the rest of his composition, or maybe just a Briar 2 or something like that. So this is actually just no downside. He's so far ahead, he can actually just play for level 10. A very rare scenario in set 12 in general because you have so much gold, it's just going to be sunk into charms a lot of time. But if your charm ends up enabling you to do this, it's really good. He's just trying to angle his Tahm Kench to get the right angle of his cast. So that's all he's really focused on. Just trying to position Diana and Tahm Kench correctly. Little bit of like a crapshoot against better players because it's just hard. Everyone just randomizes their backline and they swap. So don't try to overthink it. Just, you know, go for simple like 1-2 swaps or the 1-2-3s. I wouldn't go any crazier than that. There's some people that just like click left, right, left, right, left, right, and they end up confusing themselves. Actually, that gives you a higher chance for you to misclick and mess up your positioning entirely. So try not to get too fancy with it. Ramblinnn gets a champion duplicator and he's rolling now because I think the game is going to be over. So he doesn't even necessarily want the game to extend. He wants to end it before the carousel. If he's able to kill Goobums and maybe someone matches up against his ghost, if he gets strong enough here, he can actually just kill them before they potentially spike off the carousel. And that carousel might give him an emblem. It might give him the exact 2-star 5 cost they need or an item that really takes them over the top. So this is just wise evaluation of lobby tempo and saying, I want to end here as opposed to letting the game extend. Doesn't work though. Like Goobums ends up getting the ghost of the Ziggs player, so he ends up seeing the carousel anyways. These gloves looks acceptable. Adaptive for Tahm Kench seems acceptable. Just anything to help improve the quality of his board. Now Ramblinnn recognizes that all he has to do is just roll down and get a reasonable combat charm. Another thing you could think about is he ends up getting a bunch of extra gold, and that extra gold lets him fish for the charm that he wants. And I think Summon Golem is like the highest win rate charm right now that isn't just like a straight up OP one like the Star or Xerath 3's charm. So he ends up spending his gold to roll for a powerful charm every turn. That's also a really smart way to play. And actually goes back to the thing that I just said, which is it's really hard to reach level 10 currently in this set. Does he end up winning this fight, Xerath? Oh, wow. He ends up losing. I was surprised. I kind of thought that he would be able to do it. Looks like he ends up barely losing. It might be positioning. He ended up back centering his Varus, but Goobums is wisely spreading his backline as well, so that way Varus doesn't get good AoE. He does end up getting a Radiant item onto this Diana, and that ends up being really good. Like, the Radiant Spark actually is probably the best possible thing that could have happened for Diana, and that also enables the Xerath. So this probably could be the end here, because Diana looks really, really strong, and it looks like Kalista died. I mean, if Kalista dies, the team dies, so no more DPS survives. And that is GG. Ramblinnn only needed top 4, but he gets a first and clutches out a performance to advance to the next day in tournament, and shows you why this Varus comp, when you're able to get things online, you play it very intelligently, can truly pop off and beats all of these meta comps. So that right there is a really good example of how powerful the Varus line can be, especially Arcana Varus, which caps really, really high if you're able to, you know, get ahead and snowball that lead and get really good items for it. And one thing to note is that that's just like one of many different variations. There were other people playing Blaster variations. You could also play Pyro and Frost, which also finds a lot of success as well. So mastering this line will help you climb in an environment where everyone's going for Kalista or those contested rerolls. I do think Varus is one of the strongest comps in the game for you to learn. Check it out. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time.